Let's be clear from the start. Kindness by itself is not enough to survive in this world. If you've been raised to believe that simply being a good person guarantees success, then you've been living inside a comforting illusion, and deep down, some part of you already knows it. You've felt it in the quiet moments after being overlooked, in the sting of being used despite your best intentions. You've sensed the unfairness, that gnawing feeling when you've done everything right, yet someone else, less moral and more cunning, walks away with the prize. This isn't just bad luck, it's the rules of the game at work. Rules most people never bother to learn because they're too busy trying to survive by the ones they were taught as children. Think about it. How many times have you gone out of your way to help someone, only to be met with silence or a polite thank you that quickly fades into nothing? How many times have you bitten your tongue to avoid conflict, convinced that your restraint would earn you respect, only to be treated with even more disregard? We've been conditioned to believe that honesty, nobility, and kindness will always be rewarded. But the reality is far colder. The world does not reward the good. It rewards those who know how to move their pieces strategically, who understand not just the rules, but the hidden rules, the unspoken codes that govern human interaction. And this is where Niccolo Machiavelli enters the conversation, not as the monster some imagine, but as a clear-eyed observer of human nature. In The Prince, Machiavelli didn't write for dreamers. He wrote for survivors and rulers in an era where the wrong move could cost you your life. His conclusion was unsettling yet undeniable. Human beings are inherently self-interested, fickle, and capable of cruelty when the situation demands it. To him, virtue without cunning was not just ineffective, it was dangerous. Because goodness without strategy is like a lamb wandering into a forest of wolves. It doesn't matter how pure your intentions are, you will still be devoured. And maybe you've already fallen into that trap. Maybe you've believed that if you worked hard, stayed honest, and treated everyone fairly, you would rise. But history, and perhaps your own life, has proven otherwise. The men and women who climb the highest peaks, whether in politics, business, or any arena of influence, do not do so on pure goodwill alone. They combine principle with pragmatism, charm with calculation. They understand when to step into the light and when to disappear into the shadows. They know morality can be a tool, not an unchanging law. Think of the figures who shaped history, leaders who were admired not because they were saints, but because they knew how to wield both kindness and ruthlessness when the moment demanded it. Abraham Lincoln, often remembered for his compassion, was also a shrewd strategist who navigated treacherous political waters during America's Civil War. Queen Elizabeth I of England maintained her reign not just through diplomacy, but through calculated displays of strength, selective alliances, and a mastery of perception. Even the beloved Dalai Lama, known for his gentle demeanor, speaks openly about the need for wise selfishness, helping others in ways that also protect and strengthen yourself. The problem isn't that you are good. The problem is that you believe others are playing by the same moral code as you. They are not. The world is full of predators wearing friendly smiles, opportunists who can smell vulnerability before you even realize you're showing it. And without knowing it, you have been their perfect target, reliable, generous, and predictable. Machiavelli offers an alternative, what he might call intelligent kindness. This isn't about betraying your values or turning into a villain. It's about coupling compassion with a deep understanding of reality. It's learning to read people's true intentions, to anticipate the knife before it's at your back, to know when to trust and when to guard your silence. Intelligent kindness means helping without becoming indebted, giving without making yourself expendable, and smiling when necessary, while keeping your eyes open for the moment when that smile should disappear. Here's the question you must face. Do you want to keep being loved in a way that makes you harmless, or respected in a way that makes you untouchable? Because there is a difference, and until you see that difference clearly, you'll continue to play the game by rules that no one else is following. If you've ever wondered why certain people seem to repeatedly find themselves betrayed, overlooked, or taken advantage of, the answer often lies in a dangerous combination: purity of intention mixed with a lack of strategic awareness. It's like carrying gold in your pockets and walking through a city with your hands wide open. You might think your honesty protects you, but to others, it only announces that you're easy prey. This is the trap of naive goodness, and history is littered with examples of people who stepped into it without ever realizing they were in danger until it was too late. Machiavelli saw this pattern in the courts and palaces of Renaissance Italy, where rulers who believed virtue alone would keep them safe often met the fastest and bloodiest ends. In The Prince, he recounts how leaders who were overly generous or excessively trusting were not rewarded for their openness. They were exploited, manipulated, and sometimes assassinated by the very people they thought were allies. For him, it wasn't cynicism. It was a clear-eyed acknowledgement of how power actually functions. But this trap isn't limited to monarchs and political figures. It's everywhere, woven into the fabric of everyday life. Think of the colleague who takes credit for your hard work, the friend who only calls when they need something, the romantic partner who drains you emotionally while promising love they never intend to fully give. These aren't just bad luck encounters. They are case studies in what happens when kindness isn't paired with discernment. Opportunists thrive on the unguarded. They look for the ones who avoid confrontation, who will forgive without consequence, who believe that giving endlessly will eventually inspire reciprocity. In reality, it inspires dependence, and worse, contempt. And the modern world has only amplified this dynamic. In the age of social media, where appearances often outweigh reality, the naive, kind person becomes an even easier target. Share too much of your life online, and people will use that information to manipulate you. Offer too much of your time for free, and you'll be labeled generous right up until the moment you decide to set boundaries. Then you'll be called selfish. It's the paradox Machiavelli warned about. The more accessible and giving you are without strategy, the more likely you are to be disrespected. So, what is the antidote? Intelligent kindness, a concept that requires you to see the world not as you wish it to be, but as it is. It means doing good while remaining alert to the possibility of exploitation. It's the discipline of asking yourself, who benefits most from my actions? Do I? Or am I giving away my energy to someone who would never do the same for me? Intelligent kindness is not cold. It's warm with awareness. It doesn't close your heart, but it strengthens your spine. Look at the great figures who managed to be both kind and formidable. Nelson Mandela, for example, emerged from 27 years in prison with no desire for revenge. Yet he understood that forgiveness without political leverage would mean nothing. He paired reconciliation with calculated negotiations that secured his position and the stability of a nation. Mother Teresa's work was undeniably compassionate, but she was also a relentless strategist in fundraising and managing her public image to sustain her mission. The naive believe that goodness is its own armor. The wise understand that goodness is a tool, one that can build or destroy depending on how it's wielded. Naive goodness is reactive. It waits for others to treat you well before you decide how to act. Intelligent kindness is proactive. It reads the landscape, senses the intentions of others, and chooses the right moment to extend a hand or withdraw it. Here's the truth few dare to admit. The world doesn't punish the cruel nearly as much as it punishes the unprepared. A ruthless person who understands human nature will often outmaneuver a kind person who doesn't. That's why Machiavelli's lessons are still relevant centuries later. They are not a call to become heartless, but a warning that without the right kind of awareness, your heart becomes an open wound for the opportunistic to exploit. So, you must ask yourself, how many times in your life have you mistaken being liked for being respected? How many times have you kept the peace at the cost of your own dignity? If you can't count the number of times you felt regret after being too nice, it's not because you were wrong to be good. It's because you were unprepared for the reality that not everyone deserves the same version of your kindness. The challenge is to keep your compassion intact while making sure it never again becomes an invitation for someone to walk over you. Machiavelli's most infamous line still echoes across centuries. It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. At first it feels almost cruel. Why choose fear over love? But if you strip away the sentiment and examine the logic, the truth becomes clear. Love is voluntary, and voluntary emotions are fragile. They can fade, be swayed, or be replaced the moment someone else offers more charm, more comfort, or more benefits. Fear, on the other hand, is rooted in instinct, harder to shake, harder to ignore, and less dependent on fleeting moods. Now, Machiavelli wasn't advocating for tyranny or senseless cruelty. He understood that pure fear, without a shred of respect, breeds rebellion. But he also knew that being universally loved often comes at a cost, the cost of authority. People are far more likely to test your limits when their attachment to you is based solely on affection. Think about it. Have you ever noticed how those who seek approval above all else often end up compromising their own boundaries? The parent who wants to be best friends with their children struggles to enforce discipline. The manager desperate to be liked by the team hesitates to make unpopular decisions, even when those decisions are necessary for the company's survival. History provides countless examples. Consider Julius Caesar, charismatic, adored by the masses, but ultimately brought down in part because those closest to him did not fear betraying him. Contrast this with Genghis Khan, whose rule was not without loyalty, but whose power was secured by a reputation that made betrayal unthinkable for most. Even in the corporate world, leaders like Steve Jobs commanded both admiration and a certain level of fear. His exacting standards and unpredictable responses kept people performing at their highest level. The psychological reason is simple. Fear establishes boundaries in ways love rarely can. When people fear disappointing you, crossing you, or underestimating you, they think twice before acting against your interests. Love alone often inspires a sense of comfort, but comfort can lead to complacency, and complacency invites disrespect. The tragedy for many kind-hearted people is that they choose to be loved because it feels safe. Being loved means acceptance, warmth, and harmony. But Machiavelli's question still stands. What have you gained from it? If you've chosen love at the expense of authority, chances are you've gained temporary approval but lost long-term respect. You've gained people's smiles, but not their loyalty when it matters most. You've gained pleasant conversations, but not influence over decisions that affect your life. This is where intelligent kindness begins to take shape as something far more complex than simple goodwill. It is the ability to be loved when it benefits you and feared when it protects you, to shift between the two as the situation demands. Imagine a scale. On one side is warmth, on the other is firmness. The art lies in keeping the scale balanced enough that people never feel you are entirely predictable. They must never be certain whether their next action will be met with a smile or a calculated withdrawal of your favor. That uncertainty is where respect grows. Think of leaders who mastered this duality. Queen Elizabeth. One was adored for her intellect and charm, but foreign envoys and domestic rivals knew her political cunning could be ruthless. Franklin D. Roosevelt was seen as a man of the people, yet his political maneuvering was anything but naive. Those who underestimated his resolve often found themselves quietly edged out of influence. Even the Roman philosopher Seneca, often remembered for his moral teachings, advised that mercy should never undermine one's authority. The danger isn't in being loved, it's in being only loved. When you allow love to be your sole source of influence, you become dependent on the goodwill of others. And goodwill is fickle. People's affections can change overnight, but their awareness of your strength lingers much longer. That's why the choice is not truly between love or fear. It's about weaving both into your presence so that admiration does not erode respect and respect does not suffocate connection. Ask yourself this: in the circles where you move, at work, in your family, in your friendships, are you known as someone to be cherished or someone to be reckoned with? If the answer is only the former, you may already be paying the price for a power imbalance you didn't even realize you created. The goal is not to terrify people, but to make sure they know that behind your kindness lies the quiet capacity for decisive action. That is when you stop being a pawn on the board and start becoming one of the players. Machiavelli understood something that most people still resist admitting. In the game of power, it's not enough to be. You must also appear. The perception of strength, competence, and authority often outweighs the reality of those qualities. In other words, your reputation will often walk into the room long before you do, and people will treat you according to the image they've constructed in their minds. If that image is weak, no amount of hidden ability will save you. If that image is strong, even your flaws will be overlooked, and your influence will extend far beyond your actual reach. Consider this. How many times have you seen an incompetent person rise faster than a talented one, simply because they knew how to project confidence? The corporate world is filled with such stories. The person who speaks up decisively in meetings, dresses with intent, and carries themselves with poise often gets promoted over the quieter genius who assumes their work will speak for itself. The truth is, the world doesn't always reward the most skilled. It rewards those who can sell the perception of being skilled. This is why Machiavelli insisted that rulers must cultivate an image that commands respect. It's not about deception for its own sake. It's about aligning people's perception with the narrative you want to live in. A leader who appears uncertain invites challenge. A worker who appears invisible remains stuck. A person who projects no value in relationships risks being taken for granted no matter how much they give. History is full of leaders who understood this art. Napoleon Bonaparte carefully crafted his public image as the unstoppable general, commissioning paintings that made him appear taller and more regal than he was. Winston Churchill, during the darkest days of World War II, deliberately presented himself as calm, resolute, and unbreakable, not because he never doubted, but because Britain needed to believe their leader was a rock against the storm. Even in the Renaissance courts Machiavelli knew well, rulers would stage elaborate ceremonies, wear specific colors, and control the flow of information about their victories and failures, all to maintain the impression that they were unshakable. Psychology backs this up. Humans are wired to make snap judgments based on limited cues: tone of voice, body language, eye contact, and even posture. Once someone forms an impression of you, it's difficult to overturn. If you project confidence and authority from the start, every action you take will be filtered through that lens. Conversely, if you project insecurity, people will unconsciously look for evidence to confirm it. And in the digital age, perception has become even more potent. Your social media presence, your public interactions, and even how you appear in a single photo can shape how others treat you before they've exchanged a single word with you. This is why some public figures can survive scandals, because their cultivated image has built a reservoir of credibility that makes people hesitate to turn against them. The key, however, is authenticity within strategy. Projecting an image is not about pretending to be something you're not. It's about amplifying the strongest, most valuable aspects of yourself so they are impossible to ignore. A lion does not need to roar constantly to be recognized as dangerous. Its very posture carries the threat. In the same way, your image should carry the essence of your strength without you having to announce it. Ask yourself, in your current life, who controls the narrative about you? Do you actively shape it, or do you leave it in the hands of others? Because make no mistake, if you don't craft your own image, someone else will craft it for you, and their version will serve their interests, not yours. Machiavelli would warn that in a world of wolves, being misperceived as a lamb is an invitation to be devoured. This is where image stops being vanity and becomes a shield, and, when necessary, a sword. It is not merely how people see you, but the invisible armor that determines whether they approach you as an equal, a threat, or a target. And if you learn to wield that image with precision, you will find that doors open more easily. Conversations tilt in your favor, and people think twice before crossing you. That's the silent power of perception. And in the game of power, it can be the difference between commanding the board and being swept off it. If perception is your armor, then silence is the sharpened blade you carry at your side. Few realize how much power there is in simply not speaking, in holding back when every impulse tells you to fill the air with words. Machiavelli knew it, and so have the greatest players in history. Information is currency, and the less you give away, the richer you remain. We live in an age that worships oversharing. Social media encourages us to broadcast our every thought, our plans, our feelings, our struggles. The naive believe that openness equals honesty, and honesty equals trust. But in reality, complete transparency strips you bare and makes you predictable. When everyone knows your intentions, your weaknesses, and your next move, they can prepare for you, counter you, and in many cases, use your own words against you. Machiavelli advised that a ruler must conceal their true intentions, not because they should live in constant deceit, but because in a world where everyone seeks an advantage, full exposure is an invitation to be exploited. Think of it like playing cards. If you lay all your cards face up on the table, the game is over before it begins. Strategic silence allows you to keep certain pieces hidden until the moment you choose to reveal them, ensuring you remain the one in control. Consider the difference between two types of leaders. The first talks endlessly about their strategies, their goals, their next steps. Their subordinates, rivals, and even enemies can predict exactly where they'll be and what they'll do. The second leader speaks sparingly, shares only what is necessary, and often leaves their opponents guessing. Which one do you think is harder to manipulate? Which one keeps others on edge, unsure of what will happen next? This principle holds true far beyond politics. In business, the most successful negotiators reveal nothing they don't have to. They answer questions with precision, but never more detail than necessary. They understand that every unnecessary word is a potential weakness. In personal relationships, those who maintain a touch of mystery, who don't feel the need to justify every choice or explain every action, command more respect. People lean in to listen to those who don't speak often, because when they do, it carries weight. History offers striking examples of this power. The American industrialist Andrew Carnegie was known for listening far more than he spoke, using silence to encourage others to reveal information. The legendary Chinese general Zhuge Liang was famed for keeping his strategies secret until the exact moment to strike, winning battles not just through force, but through the disorienting effect of the unknown. Even in the modern era, figures like Steve Jobs wielded silence in presentations, letting pauses build tension before unveiling a new product. Silence also has a psychological effect. Humans dislike uncertainty. It creates tension, and tension demands resolution. When you say less, people fill in the gaps with their own imagination, often overestimating your power or influence. In negotiations, a well-placed pause can make the other person reveal more than they intended, simply to break the discomfort. In conflicts, refusing to react immediately prevents others from steering your emotions and forces them to reconsider their own position. But silence is not passivity. It is an active, deliberate choice. It means speaking when it serves your strategy and withholding when it doesn't. It means controlling the flow of information so that what others know about you is by design, not accident. It means resisting the urge to explain yourself to people who don't deserve an explanation, to justify your decisions to those who have no stake in them. Ask yourself, how many times have you spoken too soon, only to regret it? How many times have you revealed a plan, only to watch someone else steal the idea or undermine it before you could act? How many times have you tried to defend yourself, only to give your critic more material to use against you? Strategic silence would have saved you in every one of those moments. The most dangerous person in the room is often the quiet one, the one who listens, observes, and gives away nothing. They force others to play in the dark, to guess at intentions, to wonder how much they truly know. And in that uncertainty lies power. The question is, will you continue to be the open book that anyone can read, or will you learn to keep a few pages blank, pages that only you control? Because in the game of influence, it's not just what you say that matters, it's what you choose not to say that can change everything. If strategic silence keeps your opponents guessing, unpredictability ensures they can never settle into a rhythm against you. Predictable people are easy to control. Their reactions can be mapped, their decisions anticipated, and their weaknesses exploited. But when you break patterns, when people cannot be certain what you will do next, you become dangerous. And dangerous people are respected, even by those who dislike them. Machiavelli understood this better than most. In The Prince, he warned against letting your enemies or rivals grow too comfortable in knowing your habits. Comfort breeds calculation, and calculation breeds plots. But when your actions are inconsistent in a deliberate way, sometimes yielding, sometimes aggressive, sometimes silent, sometimes bold, you disrupt the assumptions others have built about you. That disruption forces them to constantly adjust, wasting their energy trying to anticipate a move you may never make. The art lies in controlling the unpredictability, not becoming erratic. There is a difference between chaos and strategy. True unpredictability is calculated. It's knowing when to deviate from your usual approach to create an advantage. For example, if you are known for always negotiating calmly, there may come a moment when raising your voice, just once, shocks the other side into giving ground. If you are known for responding immediately to messages or requests, strategically delaying a reply can signal power and make the other party uneasy. History is filled with examples of leaders and tacticians who weaponized unpredictability. The Mongol armies under Genghis Khan would appear to retreat in panic, drawing enemies into pursuit, only to wheel around and crush them in a devastating counterattack. In Japanese samurai strategy, unpredictability was prized as a psychological weapon. The warrior who could not be read held the advantage before a single sword was drawn. Even in the world of modern politics, Figures like Winston Churchill would sometimes give the impression of being disengaged or distracted, only to reveal they had been quietly preparing a decisive move. Unpredictability also disrupts manipulation. Manipulators rely on patterns. They test you to see how you react, then repeat behaviors to get the outcome they want. If every time you are insulted you defend yourself, they know exactly how to push your buttons. If every time someone asks for a favor, you say yes, they know you can be drained at will. But when you occasionally break your own pattern, refusing a request you would normally accept, staying calm when you're expected to explode, you rob them of control. There's a deeper psychological reason. Unpredictability commands respect. It creates a subtle fear of the unknown. People tend to overestimate the danger of what they can't predict. When they cannot calculate your next step, they approach you with caution, even if they outwardly appear confident. This cautious respect is what keeps rivals from acting too boldly against you. In personal relationships, unpredictability prevents complacency. If you always respond the same way, people may begin to take you for granted. But when you occasionally shift, introducing surprise, changing the pace, altering your tone, you keep interactions alive and prevent others from falling into lazy assumptions about who you are. This doesn't mean you should become inconsistent in your values or betray your core principles. True unpredictability operates within a framework of integrity. You are still the same person at your core, but your methods are flexible. This is why the most respected strategists appear both steady and mercurial. Their moral compass doesn't change, but their tactics adapt to the moment. Ask yourself, do people in your life already know exactly what you'll say in certain situations? Can they predict with near-perfect accuracy how you'll respond to criticism, rejection, or praise? If so, you've given them the ability to play you like a familiar game. Breaking those patterns, deliberately and thoughtfully, is the first step in reclaiming control over how others engage with you. Because the truth is, in any field, business, politics, war, even love, the element of surprise is often the deciding factor. And when you master it, you will find that others start to watch you more closely, speak to you more carefully, and think twice before underestimating you. In their minds, you become a question mark they cannot solve. And in the game of power, a question mark is far more dangerous than an open book. If unpredictability keeps people guessing, scarcity makes them crave your presence. Human nature is simple in one regard. What is abundant is taken for granted, and what is rare is valued. Machiavelli hinted at this principle when he warned rulers against becoming too accessible, not because they should disdain their subjects, but because familiarity erodes authority. The more available you are, the more people begin to see you as a resource rather than a person of power. Think about the dynamics in your own life. The friend who is always free to talk at any hour eventually becomes the friend you take for granted. The employee who says yes to every task ends up being loaded with more work than anyone else, without more recognition. The partner who sacrifices all their time to be available loses the air of mystery and independence that made them attractive in the first place. It's not cruelty, it's psychology. We assign value based on perceived scarcity, not just intrinsic worth. History offers clear examples of this. Royal courts in Europe understood the value of limiting access to the monarch. Kings and queens did not walk freely among their people every day. Their appearances were events, carefully staged to heighten impact. In modern times, high-profile leaders and celebrities manage their public image by rationing appearances, interviews, and statements. This isn't arrogance. It's a deliberate control of supply to maintain demand. The same principle operates in business. Exclusive brands thrive not just because of quality, but because they produce in limited quantities. A luxury watch might cost thousands not only due to craftsmanship, but because only a few exist. That rarity signals status and makes ownership a symbol of distinction. You can apply this to yourself. If your time, attention, and approval are given out too freely, they lose their perceived value. But if you choose when, where, and to whom you give them, each moment carries more weight. Scarcity also builds anticipation. When your presence is not constant, people notice when you arrive. They wonder what you've been doing, what you're thinking, what you might say. Your absence makes your appearance an event, not a routine. This psychological pull works in relationships, negotiations, and leadership alike. Absence, when timed correctly, magnifies respect. Yet most people fear disappearing. They worry that if they step back, they'll be forgotten. That fear keeps them constantly available, constantly present, and ultimately, constantly undervalued. But here's the paradox. If your only way of being remembered is by always being there, you were never truly memorable to begin with. Those with real impact can step back without losing relevance, precisely because their value is recognized beyond their physical presence. The art is in managing your availability with precision. It's not about vanishing entirely, but about knowing when to step forward and when to withdraw. Sometimes, not answering right away, not attending every meeting, or not volunteering for every task makes people seek you out. It creates a subtle chase, a desire to re-engage on your terms. Consider the leaders who know when to disappear. A CEO might avoid micromanaging, stepping in only for critical moments, so when they do speak, the room listens. An artist might go years without releasing new work, only to have their return ignite massive attention. Even in personal relationships, taking time for yourself, whether to rest, to pursue personal goals, or simply to think, can reignite appreciation from those around you. This is the discipline Machiavelli implied. Do not exhaust yourself fighting every battle, attending every event, or making yourself endlessly accessible. Scarcity keeps you valuable, but it also preserves your energy for the moments that truly matter. If you are everywhere, you blend into the background. If you are selective, you become unforgettable. Ask yourself, who in your life would notice if you stepped back for a week? If the answer is probably no one, it's not necessarily because you lack worth. It's because you've made your presence so constant, it no longer registers. The solution is not to become cold or aloof, but to remember that in the game of influence, too much access dilutes power. In the same way the rarest gem draws the most attention, your value increases when you refuse to let yourself be treated like common currency. In the hierarchy of power, few skills are as decisive as the ability to master your emotions. Machiavelli understood that a ruler who could not control their temper or anxiety was a ruler who could be provoked into mistakes. The same is true for anyone navigating the complex social webs of modern life. If someone else can predictably trigger your anger, sadness, or panic, then they hold the strings, not you. Think about the last time you lost your composure. Maybe it was a heated argument, a moment of humiliation, or an unexpected betrayal. In that instant, who had the real power? It wasn't you, it was the person or the situation that drew you into reaction. Because the moment you react without thinking, you abandon the driver's seat and hand over control. This is exactly why skilled negotiators, seasoned politicians, and military leaders often appear unshakable. They understand that composure under pressure is both a shield and a weapon. The psychological mechanics behind this are simple but profound. People unconsciously mirror the emotions of those they interact with, what psychologists call emotional contagion. If you remain calm in chaos, you project stability, and others feel more grounded in your presence. This alone can position you as a leader, even without a formal title. Conversely, if you erupt at the smallest provocation, you project instability, and people instinctively trust you less, regardless of your competence. History is full of leaders whose composure became their defining strength. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, John F. Kennedy faced immense pressure from military advisors urging aggressive action. By keeping his emotions in check and resisting the urge to respond impulsively, he steered the situation toward a peaceful resolution, avoiding what could have been nuclear catastrophe. In contrast, leaders who allowed rage or fear to guide them, like Tsar Nicholas II during the 1905 revolution, often made hasty, self-destructive decisions that accelerated their downfall. Emotional control is not emotional suppression. It doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you choose how, when, and to whom you reveal what you feel. A well-timed display of anger can be effective when it's deliberate, not impulsive. A visible expression of sadness can inspire loyalty if it's authentic and purposeful. The difference lies in whether the emotion serves your strategy or sabotages it. You've likely met people who can't help but react in the moment, who fire off messages in anger, lash out when embarrassed, or spill secrets when anxious. These are the easiest people to manipulate. Provoking them is like pressing a button on a machine. You know exactly what will happen. Now imagine becoming the opposite, someone who responds, not reacts, who observes before speaking, who surprises others with composure when they expect volatility. That is the person others cannot easily read and therefore cannot easily control. Training emotional control is a discipline. It can start with the smallest acts, pausing before answering a difficult question, taking a breath before replying to an insult, resisting the urge to respond instantly to bad news. Over time, these pauses create space between stimulus and response, a space where strategy can take root. In relationships, emotional control can prevent escalation. A partner who remains calm during conflict forces the other person to either lower their tone or reveal themselves as unreasonable. In business, it allows you to assess an offer or proposal without being swept away by excitement or fear. In public speaking or leadership, it allows you to project confidence even when the stakes are high. Machiavelli would argue that the one who cannot be provoked holds the ultimate advantage. Because if no one can dictate your emotional state, no one can dictate your actions. And when you reach that point, when others can't tell whether you're unaffected or simply choosing your moment, you begin to embody a form of power that is subtle yet undeniable. Ask yourself, who in your life knows exactly how to push your buttons? And what would happen if, starting tomorrow, those buttons no longer worked? Because in the game of influence, control of your emotions isn't just self-discipline. It's a form of dominance that keeps you in command while others lose themselves in the heat of the moment. In a world addicted to speed, patience is a weapon few know how to use. Most people move too fast, rushing decisions, chasing immediate rewards, reacting the moment an opportunity appears. Machiavelli knew this impulse well, and he saw its dangers. He wrote that fortune favors those who can adapt to circumstances, which often means resisting the urge to act until the conditions are perfect. To the impatient, waiting feels like weakness. To the strategist, waiting is positioning. Picture a predator in the wild, a tiger crouched in the tall grass. It doesn't leap at the first flicker of movement. It studies, adjusts, and anticipates the exact moment when the prey is most vulnerable. One strike, perfectly timed, is worth a dozen failed lunges. That is the mindset of the patient strategist. You are not inactive. You are observing, learning, calculating. Every second you wait, you are gathering the information that will make your move decisive. History offers countless examples of this principle. In 1805, Admiral Horatio Nelson waited for weeks, refusing to engage Napoleon's navy until the French fleet's formation weakened. His patience paid off in the Battle of Trafalgar, where his decisive strike secured British naval dominance for a century. In the corporate world, Warren Buffett has built an empire not by chasing every investment, but by sitting on capital until he finds opportunities so favorable they're nearly impossible to lose. Patience doesn't mean you do nothing. It means you avoid doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Impulsive people burn their energy in battles they don't need to fight. They react to every slight, chase every lead, and answer every challenge without considering the cost. Strategists know that energy is finite, and once spent, it's gone. So they spend it only when the potential return outweighs the risk. This approach also destabilizes your rivals. If someone expects you to respond immediately and you don't, they are forced into uncertainty. Silence and delay make them second-guess their own position. In negotiations, this can lead to better offers. In conflicts, it can make opponents overextend themselves, revealing their weaknesses. Patience also protects you from traps. The hasty are easily lured by promises of quick gain, blinded to the dangers beneath. Scam artists, manipulative bosses, and even hostile nations have all used urgency as a weapon, forcing a decision before their target can examine the facts. By slowing down, you deny them that advantage. The discipline to wait comes from seeing beyond the immediate moment. It requires an ability to think in terms of years rather than days, to value the long-term position over the short-term win. Many of the most successful leaders in history have been those who could endure uncertainty without flinching, who trusted that the right moment would reveal itself. In your own life, this might mean resisting the urge to respond to an insult in the moment, waiting to address it when the other person's guard is down. It might mean holding off on a risky investment until the numbers are undeniable. It could mean staying silent in a group discussion until the critical point is reached, and then speaking with words that shift the entire direction of the conversation. Ask yourself, are you the hunter who lunges at every sound in the forest, or the one who waits until the prey is exactly where you want it? Because in the game of influence, patience is not passivity. It's the quiet sharpening of the blade, the slow tightening of the net. And when you finally move, it will seem to everyone else as if you struck in an instant, when in reality, You've been setting the stage all along. You now know the principles: intelligent kindness, the balance of love and fear, mastery of image, strategic silence, calculated unpredictability, scarcity of presence, emotional control, and the patience to wait for the perfect strike. But knowing these things is not enough. The final transformation comes when you stop playing the game as everyone else plays it and instead become an anomaly, someone who doesn't fit neatly into the system's expectations. The vast majority of people live within boundaries they never question. They follow the same patterns, respond in predictable ways, and assume the rules they were taught are fixed. This predictability is what the powerful feed on. If you always react as expected, you are not a player. You are a piece to be moved. To escape that fate, you must be willing to rewrite the script. Not recklessly, not for the sake of chaos, but to create a pattern so distinct that others cannot anticipate you. The great outliers of history understood this. Leonardo da Vinci moved between art, science, and engineering in an age when most people specialized in one craft, making him impossible to categorize. T.E. Lawrence, known as Lawrence of Arabia, broke military convention by blending Bedouin guerrilla tactics with modern strategy, catching the Ottoman Empire completely off guard. Even in the corporate world, innovators like Elon Musk disrupt industries not by improving within the current framework, but by redefining the framework itself. Becoming an anomaly starts with resisting the reflex to conform. If everyone around you shares too much, you cultivate mystery. If they rush to act, you wait. If they cling to being liked, you focus on respect. If they avoid confrontation, you choose your battles strategically. Over time, this creates an aura of unpredictability and authority. People can't quite pin you down, and that uncertainty works in your favor. This shift also changes how you see yourself. You stop needing validation from the very structures designed to keep you in your place. You start playing a longer, deeper game, where every move is intentional and every interaction serves a purpose. When others scramble for immediate gains, you're quietly building a foundation for dominance. When they fight over scraps, you're positioning yourself for the feast they don't even know is coming. The most powerful transformation is internal. You begin to realize that you were never powerless. You were simply operating under the wrong assumptions. The moment you apply these strategies, you start to see how quickly the balance shifts. People who once dismissed you now hesitate. Those who underestimated you become cautious. Even those who try to manipulate you find themselves on unstable ground, unsure of where you stand or what you might do next. But here is the choice that separates those who rise from those who fade back into obscurity: action. You can let this knowledge sit in your mind as an interesting set of ideas, or you can start applying it quietly, steadily, deliberately, until it becomes part of who you are. The shift doesn't have to be dramatic at first. It can start with a single act of strategic silence in a conversation, a deliberate delay in responding, a subtle change in your presence, a conscious moment of holding your emotions in check. These small moves add up. Before you know it, the way people respond to you changes. You are no longer the open book they can read at a glance. You become the figure they must approach carefully, the one they can't quite figure out. And in a world that devours the predictable, being unreadable is one of the highest forms of power. The truth is, the system is not built for your kindness, your fairness, or your comfort. It's built to reward those who know how to operate within and beyond its rules. By becoming an anomaly, you stop being another player on the board and start being the one who shapes the board itself. That's the moment you stop merely surviving and begin to dominate your own destiny.